Thank you. I rise to present Resolution SCR 30 that recognizes February 2023 as Black History Month and the momentous impact that Black Americans have made and continue to make in this country. And I present this on behalf of the Legislative Black Caucus and my colleague, Senator Bradford, and so many of the unsung heroes who were awarded today. It's really special for me to present this resolution in this chamber in my 8th week now in the state Senate, because the more I'm in this space, I feel that this is where we can build the bridge to the future. This is where we can right the wrongs. This is where we recognize failed policies and make commitments to course correct. And I think that Black History Month, and particularly this theme of resistance, helps inspire and encourage all of us to do that. So the origins of Black History Month begins in 1915, half a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. That year, Carter G. Woodson, a Harvard-educated historian, believed that history not only omitted Black presence, but distorted it. Especially in that year, in February of 1915, the release of the film, The Birth of a Nation, reinforced his beliefs. The hideous and enormously successful movie that painted a white supremacist vision of the American past and inspired the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan after the Reconstruction era, a resurgence that we too often see play out in our government and in our communities today. That September, Woodson founded the Association of the Study of Negro Life and History, now the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. He's known as the father of Black history, and he urged educators at that time to set aside a week in February in 1926 for the purpose of emphasizing the history and the contributions of the Negro. Now in the 21st century, we celebrate this month to mark Black survival, accomplishments, rebellion, and resistance as the ultimate weapon against white supremacy. Our history has taught us that white supremacy is a democracy-killing force that has operated in plain sight for Black people everywhere and is now just beginning to be understood as a threat to American liberty everywhere. This is what makes Black history American history. For those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. In 1619, after Africans first arrived on these shores, brought to America in slave ships, it was the backs of the enslaved Black people that helped this nation create a globally competitive economy. The labor of slavery paid for the substantial share of the capital in iron and manufactured goods that laid the stage for America's early years of unprecedented and unmatched economic growth. Prior to the Civil War, the exports of slavery-grown cotton constituted up to 60% of the value of the nation's total exports. Black Americans built this country, both materially and financially. Additionally, the freedom of the enslaved created the Freedmen's Bureau, which formed in 1865 and provided the first schooling to slaves and poor whites, and was the early examples of our public education system, education for all. At the turn of the 20th century, Black Americans who had little access to formal education and training were responsible for a high number of inventions during the Second Industrial Revolution with patents that helped to, again, propel this country to greatness. Since the slave slowdowns of the cotton fields in the South, Black people have been involved in the labor movement. In fact, Labor Day holiday was established in response to the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters national movement, which was founded in 1925. It was the first national organizing led by Black railroad workers. Then the civil rights movement. Through the civil rights movement, Black people, through nonviolent protests and mass movement and marches, demanded that America live up to the ideals of democracy, liberty, and justice for all in this country, a model that is used today by so many groups that seek change and freedom and opportunity. The enduring legacy of U.S. racism, combined with public policy, social norms, and unconscious bias, institutional practices, have collided into a perfect storm of growing disparities that now the new generation, through Black Lives Matter and other movements, are standing up and challenging and saying that the rights to equity, to defend economic opportunity for Black men and women and the sanctity of life is about protecting our democracy as a whole. No matter what the modern crisis is we're facing, we can trace it back to the original sins of slave eras and the continued resistance and rebellion and struggle of Black Americans in partnerships with allies. By teaching our next generation about the entire history of Black people in America, perhaps we can grow closer to realizing the true ideals of democracy. This year's theme, Black Resistance, this Black History Month, explores how Black people have resisted historic and ongoing oppression, have had continued to triumph throughout history in the face of racism and institutionalized barriers. I am proud to come from this generation, this tradition of resistance, to build the fundamental reality of our legacy, from the abolition movement to the civil rights movement to the anti-apartheid movement to Black Lives Movement. And my role here as the sixth Black woman elected to this House in the history of the Senate is a testament to that. I strongly urge you to support this resolution, to recognize the contribution to building this nation and the contribution to continue collective resistance to build a California that we all deserve. Thank you.